That's right, he woke up in an isekai. He was inside the game he had been playing. 3 years ago, he owned a character in a game called Heroic Legend of Arhan. It was about various dangerous events that took place inside an academy. Even the end of the world was part of the story. It was a narrative on a massive scale, but everything was fine because the protagonist would take care of it all. He himself was just a side character. He was Corin Lot, an NPC, part of a beginner quest where the main character saves a villager. That was it. Simple. As long as the story followed the same path as the game, everything would be resolved. So he took a quick look at the protagonist, Park Sihu, who would soon become famous and rich, and then he arrived at the starting point. When he reached the starting point, there was a guy dressed all in black, looking like an emo, talking about soda. Corin Lot thought that soda didn't exist in this world, but the player said that, for his own good, he needed efficiency. Corin Lot grabbed his hand and said that he was a player too. At that time, Park Sihu was just an ordinary person who had a character inside the game. If there was any difference between the two of them, it was that Sihu had a privilege given to players, a status window. The problem was that Sihu had never played the game before, while Corin Lot had. Corin taught him everything he knew about the game. He had played through every story and every available route. He was a professional at that game. Having someone like him helping was an incredible advantage, and Sihu seemed to be learning very fast. Corin Lot had all the information about the game, and Sihu had the status window and the player system. Together, that made them completely unbeatable. They were a great duo. With Sihu, Corin believed they could save many people, prevent the end of the world, and eventually return to Earth. However, after a long battle, Sihu offered him an elixir. While drinking it, Corin Lot thought there was only one thing that disappointed him. Their party consisted only of men, muscular men, sweaty men. Corin Lot knew that the charm of the game was action and fantasy, but the heroines were eye-catching too, especially because there was a dating simulation system. But Sihu never got involved with any women. He only added them to the party when necessary and dismissed them afterward. At some point, they ended up with a party made up exclusively of men. With all due respect, Corin Lot asked why there was nothing but a bunch of scrawny guys in the group. In hindsight, he should have realized something was wrong much earlier. When the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor died on the way to the entrance ceremony, when Mariette, the final boss of the first stage, disappeared, when mysterious murders and disappearances began happening, when the plot started deviating from the original game, and, most importantly, the way Sihu thought, his personality. From the very beginning, Corin Lot should have doubted him. By the time he witnessed the truth, it was already too late. Mariette is one of the heroines of the game, but neither Corin nor Sihu was able to find her because she had vanished. However, inside Sihu's warehouse was Mariette's staff. Corin Lot said he had followed Sihu because he kept sneaking out at night, but he never imagined that Sihu had an underground warehouse. And it wasn't just that weapon, it was practically his entire inventory. There was Odachi, the Leasha's supreme weapon. There were many other secret items as well. Jagger's mace, Lark's spellbook, and numerous items belonging to characters who had disappeared as the game progressed. But what shocked him the most, leaving Corin Lot horrified, was seeing Mariette herself inside a capsule, being kept imprisoned. Then Sihu appeared and asked why he was there. Corin Lot asked, "What is all this?" Back then, Sihu said he had been searching for Mariette, but lost track of her. He then said that, either way, she was a demon, and asked whether Corin would really waste the blood of an elder-class vampire. She was simply being used efficiently. In fact, Sihu admitted that he had drunk a lot of it himself. Corin Lot remembered the elixir he had drunk and felt disgusted. Sihu asked what the big problem was. He said he worked hard to capture her. He spent a whole month setting up a trap in the forest. Corin Lot asked why he did this. Sihu said it was all for the sake of the story. His route was frustrating. He always ended up at a loss because he saved people. He didn't kill annoying bastards like Jagger or Lark. He kept trying to save people who couldn't be manipulated without raising their affection levels. Using them this way was much easier. He said he was better at the game than Corin Lot. At that moment, Corin realized that Sihu had lied the entire time. He was no novice. Corin asked how many people he had killed. Sihu said if he managed 3 more deaths, the count would reach 100,000. Corin Lot called him a damned monster. Sihu told him to face reality. They were all NPCs. Corin had killed many too. Corin replied that he had killed irredeemably evil beings who were literally trying to destroy the world. Efficiency? Frustration? Was he serious? Being so obsessed with efficiency, why did he take Odachi when he was a mage? And what was wrong with the common elixir bought from the shop? Corin said he just needed a punching bag for his psychopathic tendencies. At that moment, Sihu finally struck back, smashing Corin's head against the glass of the capsule that held the vampire. He said that after everything he had done for him, Corin had no right to treat him like that. Everything should belong to him. The world itself should belong to him. Corin didn't even know his place and kept sticking his nose into matters that didn't concern him. All he ever wanted was to stare at those little sluts. He said he wouldn't hold back anymore. Corin was stunned. What are you talking about? They had been together for 199 chapters, and now he was suddenly trying to change genres out of nowhere. Sihu said he had removed everything in their way so they could be together. Corin asked if that was why he had only put men in the party. Sihu replied that the others were only there for him to look at, so he didn't care about them. The only one he truly loved was Corin. Corin punched the bastard in the face and ran. Of course, he was immediately caught by Sihu's shadowy tentacles and bound like something out of a BDSM scene. Sihu said he would imprison him forever. In this fake world, Corin was the only real thing. Corin was then sealed inside the inventory, and Sihu promised to come back. Once he finished this game, they would be together forever. While trapped inside the inventory, Corin realized that the final stage had been initiated by Sihu. He had already expected Sihu to clear it. Sihu always killed everything by himself. He was overwhelmingly strong and powerful. Corin wondered what would happen to him afterward. Then the system announced that the player had died and that the challenge had failed. Corin wondered if that son of a bitch had finally lost. Then he woke up at the exact moment he first arrived in this world. He had gone back 3 years to the day he arrived, but now his goal was clear. He had to kill a player. He had to kill Sihu. There is an incident known as the Hotten River Flood. During a quest to conquer aquatic monsters, the dam collapsed, sweeping an entire village off the map. Thousands of aquatic monsters and city residents drowned. Faced with that horrific scene, Park Sihu was laughing. At the time, Corin didn't understand why he was laughing so hard. While people were dying, Sihu only saw an opportunity to monopolize experience gains. Corin realized that that damned demon had killed nearly 100,000 people. This time, he would stop him. At this moment, Park Sihu was only ranked C, just like Corin. All player growth factors were concentrated at the Makaba Academy. Once inside, Sihu would grow much stronger. He wasn't a monster yet, but he would become one very quickly. The Academy's entrance ceremony would begin in 5 days, so Corin had very little time. He started by gathering ingredients, mainly mushrooms. He knew this was his only chance to kill Sihu. Meanwhile, during the tutorial mission where a carriage heading toward the Academy broke down in a monster-infested forest, the player was supposed to join the guards and protect it. Sihu was doing exactly that, pretending to be kind. The carriage had already been repaired, so everything seemed fine. Then a massive creature appeared and interrupted them. It was a rank 2 werewolf monster. Corin Lot arrived a bit late as he hadn't had much time to prepare either. The werewolf easily defeated the knight Laura, who fell with fatal injuries. The other knight said he would buy time and told them to take the maiden away. Sihu did not stay behind. Instead, he ordered the coachman to leave with her. When Sihu turned back to the fight, the werewolf had already defeated the knight. Watching from afar, Corin Lot thought that before interfering, he needed to confirm something. Would Sihu become the hero who saves this world, or was he a possessor, just like him? At that moment, Sihu smiled and commented on what a fine werewolf it was. Suddenly, the girl from the carriage appeared and struck the monster with her sword. The werewolf easily blocked her blade, and Sihu was deeply irritated by her appearance. She was the second daughter of the Arden family, the wielder of Odachi, one of the 6 king's swords. She was the most influential member of the group and a named character. Her name was Lixa Arden. In the tutorial, there was a hidden flag if Lixa died. Sihu tried to kill her with his dagger. Corin had his confirmation. Sihu truly was a possessor. However, Lixa did not fall immediately. She was poisoned by Sihu, and he apologized, saying his hand had slipped. The werewolf took the opening and struck Odati repeatedly. Corin knew that if Lixa died during this mission, Sihu would obtain Odati. After that, he would be able to join Lunya Arden's group, a legendary swordsman. He was impressed. Even while poisoned, Lixa was still able to exchange blows with the werewolf. She continued to maintain her composure, focusing on the fight. Using her flawless footwork technique, she closed the distance and slashed at the werewolf with her sword. Sihu thought that at this rate, she might end up killing the werewolf by herself, but he was not going to let that happen. He threw the poisoned dagger at Lixa once again. When Lixa blocked it, she realized he was doing it on purpose, and she was almost struck head-on by the enraged werewolf. Even though she counterattacked, a powerful blow knocked both her and the creature to the ground. Gravely injured, Lixa asked, "Why?" Sihu replied that it was simple. He had obtained Odati. This equipment could only be used as a special skill, but he would think about that later. First, he would kill the NPCs, because they gave far more experience. He stood before Lixa, who was completely defenseless. Before he could act, something hit him in the head. A bag filled with pollen. He didn't know who had thrown it, but suddenly several monstrous rabbits charged straight at him. Corin knew that magical mushrooms were favorites among forest monsters. When covered in a certain powder, they acted like seasoning in the eyes of those creatures. Because of that, all of them rushed towards Sihu. While the monsters attacked Sihu, Corin rescued Lixa and also took the opportunity to tear out one of the werewolf's fangs. However, he was soon spotted. Sihu asked, "Who the hell is that?" Corin replied that he had killed 3 horned rabbits in 1 minute. "You need a bit of malice," he said. Sihu asked, "What is he doing here?" Corin realized that Sihu had lost his memories of him. He warned Sihu that he would cut his hand if he kept holding the sword like that. It was only a distraction so Corin could throw sand into his eyes. Sihu attacked clumsily but quickly, yet still failed to hit Corin. Corin had no choice but to push himself to defeat him. His next stabbing attack was narrowly dodged by Sihu. In truth, it wasn't a knife, it was the werewolf's fang he had just torn out. He nearly struck Sihu several times, but when Sihu focused too much on the weapon instead of his enemy, Corin revealed his real knife. He drove it into Sihu's shoulder and with the werewolf fang almost stabbed his face. Sihu caught the fang with his paw, the claw piercing straight through it. Even so, Corin pushed forward until the fang pierced Sihu's neck. He silently thanked him for his past life. He had to admit that thanks to Sihu, he had grown much stronger. Even so, he did not regret killing him here and now. He had cut the true evil at its root. The system detected that the player had been killed. It recalculated the probabilities of completing the main scenario, and the best backup was Corin. His potential, ideology, compatibility, and records were examined, and all heroic points were transferred to Corin. Corin became the player, the new player. He became the successor of the martial master, bearing the tag of subjugator, not exactly a full player. Corin wondered if he would finally obtain a status window, but that was not the priority now. Lixa was dying. She was still alive, but extremely weak and on the verge of death. One of the werewolf's fangs was embedded in her abdomen, and Corin knew exactly which poison was affecting her. At this stage of the game, that poison was very difficult to create without a combination window. If the poison's level had been higher, Lixa would have died instantly. That was a relief, but he had to hurry. First, he removed his belt and tied it around her torso to stop the bleeding. He said that he was a master at stopping bleeding and detoxifying wounds. All right? He realized that if she bit her own tongue, it would be disastrous, so he took the dead man's arm and placed it in her mouth for her to bite down on. He removed his clothes, revealing his muscular build. Now he understood why Sihu wanted him. He warned her that it would hurt a lot, but she had to endure it. With great force, he pulled the werewolf's fang out of her abdomen. He thought that he didn't know how all of this had happened, but he had gone back in time, killed a player, and saved a person. That was enough for him. Later, he was cooking the antidote over a campfire. Lixa was awake, but still very weak and on the verge of death. She asked her savior to at least tell him his name. Corin said she didn't need to know, and told her to stop thinking about it and rest a little longer. She would wake up when the antidote was ready. He said this because he knew that from now on, it would be better to keep people in the dark about his actions as much as possible. Now, he wanted to clarify the situation. The heroic legend of Arhan, as the name suggests, is the story of a hero. While resolving the incidents that occur at the academy, the player becomes the hero who saves the world. The hero must defeat countless villains and the final boss. The only reason Sihu followed the story is because the world would end if the final boss was not defeated. But now that that player was dead, someone had to take his place. He realized that it had to be him, the sub-player. However, Corin thought that if those bastards were going to do this, they should at least do it properly, because he had no permission to view the system, the interface, the inventory, the combination menu, or his status. He said that he had become a sub-player only to bear the burden, because he couldn't use any of the convenient features. In the end, it amounted to the same thing. Still, it was extremely difficult to serve as a backup for something he didn't fully understand, relying only on memories of the future that he had gained in his previous life. He would have to use factors outside the system. For 3 years he trained until he reached his limits, but at present he was nothing more than an ordinary possessor or a mere side character. At that moment, however, he created a flaming rune. In the past, he had also been desperate to survive. The only magic he had learned in his previous life was runic magic, ancient letters that contained magical power on their own. Duty, restriction, and oath, known as the runes of the 3 commandments. They were among the most powerful laws of this world, the source of superhuman strength and the cause of destruction. At that moment, he was engraving the 3 runes onto his body as if branding himself with red-hot iron. He carved duty on his left arm. This commandment grants additional power when invoking the honor of an oath. One can perform simple duties, such as not eating chicken, but because they are easy to maintain, they grant almost no status increases. Instead, he would make promises he would uphold until the very end. His first duty was this: he would not turn a blind eye to the misfortune of good people. His status would increase each time he fulfilled this duty. However, completing this mission would also result in a penalty of 10. The second rune he engraved was restriction, carved onto his right arm. He lost the ability to perceive spirits. In this world, all things emit spiritual perception. Astral beings such as ghosts and spirits lack material bodies. Since astral beings can only interact after mutual recognition, they cannot use their powers on unconscious people or on those without any spiritual perception. If he violated the bond he had just created, he would take 600% additional damage. However, in exchange, his hit rate against material beings increased by 50%. The fact that astral beings could no longer interfere with him due to this commandment effectively became a shield. Lastly, he engraved the rune of oath onto his chest. This commandment carried enormous risk, which is why neither he nor Sihu had used it in their previous lives. Yet even Sihu, who exploited everything the system offered, had ultimately failed. So Corin decided not to worry about the consequences. He would use every precaution available and take on the heaviest oath of all. He vowed to save this world. It was the greatest oath, the grandest ambition. With that, he completed his commandments. If he failed to fulfill his oath, he would die. Later, Lixa was waking up in the infirmary of Merkaba Academy. She asked the nurse where the person who had brought her there was. The nurse replied that her guardian had already left. Lixa said that was fine, but asked where her belongings were. That was when she noticed that her savior's bag was still there. His belt was still stained with blood. She then asked the nurse if there was a place nearby that sold honey candies. The nurse replied that she could only eat soup for now. 3 days after the tutorial, the day of Merkaba Academy's entrance ceremony arrived. Corin Lot was gathering what he needed to enter the academy when he noticed a letter in his wallet. It was a letter from his mother, saying how proud he was of him. She wrote that he had become a wonderful man who would protect many people. Corin Lot wondered when she had put it there. It is explained that the NPC Corin Lot is a normal, incompetent child, but even he has a family. When Corin took over this body, he acted awkwardly and unfamiliar, yet they treated him no differently. That was how he began to love them. He began to love this family of his world. That was the difference between him and Sihu. When he arrived at the cable car station that led to the academy, a woman welcomed all the new students and asked if Corin Lot was a student as well. She commented that he was so tall and must eat well. Later, he found himself in the same cable car as her. She explained various things along the way, acting like a guide. She is Mariette Dunal, a top-tier second-year student, a mage of Merkaba Academy, blessed by all and walking a wide, radiant path. As time passes, people in this world experience many tragedies and misfortunes. There are depths of despair that Mariette will face in the future. In fact, she is the final boss of the first act. Mariette handed out sweet potatoes to everyone and wished them good luck. All the players were first taken to the hall of Merkaba Academy. The magic of spatial expansion began to activate. Everyone was shocked when it happened, as they were suddenly thrown into what felt like an endless abyss. Corin Lot, however, remained calm. He already knew what was going to happen. The one conducting this was the old man Hammer. The people of this world have a long history of battles against the tribe of evil, and the most effective weapons against them are superhumans capable of using aura and mana. The place that nurtures such superhumans is the Guardian Academy, Merkaba. The first to introduce himself was Professor Fur McDawn, who would be in charge of this year's welcoming ceremony. Corin Lot even felt a bit nostalgic seeing him. Fur McDawn said that everyone must have come here to become either knights or mages. As soon as they arrived, a certification would be issued. However, he added that it was irritating to act like they were special when most of them were probably nothing more than nobodies. Because of that, the academy intended to assess each student's abilities. Corin Lot's evaluation sheet was terrible. His aura rank was low, his mana rank extremely low, his skill rating was 0, and his overall rank was 6. In other words, he had the rank of an ordinary person. The professor explained that what they were seeing was the overall ranking and instructed everyone to stand on the platform corresponding to their rank. Naturally, Corin Lot was the first in line for rank 6. The professor wished him good luck in the battle. Immediately afterwards, everyone was transported away. Meanwhile, the instructors were observing everything. One of them said there was no need to evaluate students of rank 1 or rank 2. They only needed to wait until the others finished the evaluations. In rank 2 were Relisha Harden, the granddaughter of the sword genius, Yule, the druid of Avaloan, Drone Warsky, the mercenary swordsman, and Cranal Luden, the golem sorcerer. The only person in rank 1 was the celestial Yaksha, Jaran. The instructor admitted that she hadn't even expected Jaran to enroll. Another staff member asked whether there was any point in testing ranks at all if even rank 5 students didn't seem impressive. He suggested they could just discard incompetent ranks altogether. However, the instructor replied that the director had said all students must walk the path of learning. With that settled, they were told to begin. What appeared in front of Corin Lot was a weapons crate. It was explained that in 30 seconds, a swarm of monsters would be released. The objective was to deal with as many as possible. Corin thought that it was the usual kind of test, throwing you into an empty space and forcing you to fight monsters appropriate to your level, as unfriendly as ever. Most of the students were rank 5 or 6. They probably wouldn't have time to think and would just grab whatever they could, likely a sword. That was exactly what Corin had done in his previous life. However, when small wolves appeared, rank C monsters, Corin Lot thought to himself that swords were generally fine, but people said it took 100 days to master a spear, 1,000 days for a blade, and 10,000 days for a sword. So his answer was simple. He threw a spear at the first wolf he saw, instantly killing it. When the spear returned to him, he did the same to the other two. He might not have been particularly strong, but he had experience killing these creatures. After killing a few more wolves, he muttered that it had taken 12 seconds. Too slow. In his previous life, he couldn't even kill these small dogs and had been eliminated immediately. This time, he intended to kill everything until the next test. However, when he reached the 5-minute mark, no more monsters appeared. He wondered if the system was broken. Meanwhile, one of the professors was observing the scene and mocking the rank 5 students, calling them pathetic. Back in his day, he could kill a rank 5 monster in 1 minute and 20 seconds. Then he noticed that Corin Lot was doing nothing. He was resting. Thinking it was a mistake, the professor caused more monsters to appear. Corin Lot killed them all again. When the professor turned back and saw him resting once more, he muttered, "Huh? Why is he like that again? Is there a malfunction?" Another staff member replied that there was no chance of that. Madame Josephine's test had never failed in 20 years. The professor argued that someone who should have been eliminated long ago was still standing there. Obviously, the monsters hadn't been properly summoned. When asked if he really needed confirmation, he replied that there was no need. He summoned 3 more wolves. Corin Lot was fed up. He wasn't a damn animal trainer. 1 spear per wolf. All 3 were defeated in 7.3 seconds. The instructors were completely shocked. That professor then called Professor Fair McDunn and asked about the clear times for rank 3 and rank 4 students. Fair McDunn replied that some kid named Jagger Hint managed it in 3 minutes. He asked why. The professor said it was probably nothing. Then he summoned a rank 4 monster, a Javelier, which was defeated in 3.7 seconds. Next came a rank 3 monster, an Owlbear. That one was much tougher. Corin Lot's spear strikes barely pierced its thick hide. At that point, he used a Knez rune, a flaming rune. It ignited the Owlbear's fur, and everyone watching was stunned to see someone use rune magic. However, Corin Lot realized that the fire was not very effective. Still, it was sufficient to block the creature's vision. He drove the spear straight into the owlbear's head. One of the professors thought that this boy was certainly not just a mere rank 6, and the crowd grew excited watching him fight. The next test was against a rank 5 evil spirit. At that moment, Corin sensed that something had been summoned, but since he could neither see nor hear it, it was clearly due to his penalty. He could not see spirits, which meant he could not interact with evil spirits at all. So he waited for exactly 1 minute. The summoning had definitely activated. With that, he confirmed everything he needed to know. He looked up and abandoned the test. He was disqualified from the evil spirit test, but in the monster trials, he had broken 3 records. Overall, he had done quite well. One professor wondered why he had given up. What on earth was with that boy? Later, the staff analyzed the ranks everyone had received. Amid all the commotion, Corin Lot noticed Jagger Hint. He was the guy who had started a fight with Park Sihu early in the story in Corin's previous life. Sihu had killed him in a fit of rage. Jagger was an arrogant delinquent, but that kind of behavior was common at his age. There was no reason to kill him. However, Jagger was mocking the rank C students, saying they were pathetic. Some people even lose to little wolves, he sneered. One of the people who felt cornered by this was Lark. Corin knew that in his previous life, Lark had never overcome his inferiority complex. While being bullied like this, he and El Siru had ended up sharing the same fate as Jagger: death. Just then, Director Seer himself appeared and announced that everyone had entered the academy to become stronger. Some already had enough talent, others still had a long road ahead. Although he could not guarantee they would achieve their desires at the end of their time here, he hoped they would still be able to find their own paths. The academy was only here to help them take their first step correctly. What came after that was their own responsibility. With that, he wished them a good day. After everyone dispersed, Jagger returned to harassing Lark, intimidating him by asking his rank and mocking the rank C students. At that moment, Corin approached Jagger in a friendly manner and said that his tattoo looked really cool. The letter inside it must be his blood type, right? That way he could receive a transfusion quickly if he got injured. Jagger replied that Corin knew his stuff. To be honest, his mother did the tattoo. She is a tattoo artist. She originally specialized in line work, but since he requested it, she did it in old school style. Corin said that was amazing and asked if he had more tattoos. Corin already knew this story. In his previous life, after Jagger disappeared, his mother came to the academy and explained that his tattoos were not just for show, but were done out of concern, a mother's enormous love. Just as expected, Jagger showed off several other tattoos. Corin introduced himself properly and even asked for Lark's name. They began chatting as if they were friends, effectively putting an end to the bullying. Alicia witnessed everything and thought to herself that he had saved a classmate from bullying. He really was amazing. He seemed like a genuinely good person. Corin, however, thought that this was how he made a good first impression on Lark. In truth, he saw him as a free skill book. Most of the Merkaba Academy's facilities were free. The cafeterias were cheaper than eating outside, and the dormitories were also free. Among them, the most highly recommended facilities were the training rooms. Using them, you could perform training that would otherwise be impossible, such as fighting spiritual bodies that were invisible to him. Corin was demonstrating his spear techniques. Many people gathered impressed as they watched. They said that students normally only fought spirits in the second semester, and here he was already doing it. Even Mariette showed some interest. Still, after a while, Corin took a heavy blow to the face, proving that it might still be too much for him. One of the instructors approached him and said, "So, you're the freshman," then asked why he was practicing against a spiritual body. Corin replied that he was training his spear skills, though he wondered why this old man had suddenly approached him. Had something gone wrong during his exam? Instead, he said that Corin had a great spirit. He handed him 10 meal tickets as a gift and told him to come find him any time. Corin hadn't expected that, but he thought it felt nice to receive such kindness from an instructor. Good. He resumed his training, rapidly striking at the flying wind spirit. But once again he was hit squarely in the abdomen and collapsed. This time it was Mariette who helped him up. "Is it tough, freshman?" she asked, handing him a cup of water. "You just need to get used to it. One day you will manage." But Corin thought to himself that there would be no next time. He had his next time 3 years ago. Back then, Sihu had been by his side.
He had a statistics window, potions, skill books, and a combination window, but now he was alone. After all, Corin had killed him. He thanked Mariette deeply for her help, but he resumed his training because he had to become the best. First, he needed to discover his limits, and only then surpass them. He used several techniques he had learned in his past life: the dark serpent thrust, the tiger's wind strike, the block counterattack, the returning heaven spin, and the mountain throw. Before, he did not have a strong body, nor great magical power or aura. The information about Sihu's players was very useful. However, to face monsters and geniuses, he had to work harder than anyone else. His final years would never attract him. He once again used the dark serpent thrust, which pierced part of the spirit but failed to hit it directly. Mariette noticed that he had simply thrown the spear. He gave up, but she was surprised when Corin caught the spear again mid-air, using the crawling serpent strike to hit the spirit directly, creating a massive magical explosion in the training hall. Strong and exceptional were cliches that did not suit him. Only words that could be summed up as sincere admiration lingered in Mariette's mind. She was deeply impressed, thinking he was incredible. However, the explosion launched Corin into the air and he crashed hard onto the training hall floor. He realized he had pushed his physical limits a little too far, at least with his current body. The next morning, Mariette was showing the academy's facilities to the new students. Corin was completely battered and wrapped in bandages after that incident, and he thought that for proper combat, his body was the most urgent issue. To increase his physical abilities without relying on Sihu's elixirs, there was only one way: commandments. Then he remembered one of them. do not turn a blind eye to the misfortune of others. He approached the lonely and poor Lark and asked, "How are you doing, my friend? Would you like to talk about grimoires?" A grimoire is simply a skill book, a powerful artifact that allows one to acquire magic or traits simply by reading it. The library of Merkaba Academy boasts a size as vast as the academy itself, storing and passing down humanity's knowledge for future generations. But Corin thought all of that was nonsense. In truth, the place existed to hide grimoires. Lark helped him search for these grimoires, reminding him to keep his promise. Corin replied that of course he would, as long as the conditions were met, and he would obtain the grimoire with the traits written inside. He knew Lark was a hard worker, an intellectual, and an exemplary student. Of course, no matter how many spells he had, using all of them would be extremely difficult. If a mage's mana level and rank were low, the results were poor. But with a grimoire, it was a different story. Vor was throwing several books onto the floor, and Lark told him to stop messing around. In reality, it was just a combination that opened a secret passage. Lark asked how Corin knew it was there, but Corin simply entered the hidden corridor. When they stopped halfway through, Corin said it was time to fulfill the promise. They shook hands. Lark said that Corin wanted help repelling evil spirits, right? Instead, Corin punched him straight in the face and said that now things would really begin, leaving poor Lark unconscious on the ground. Corin intended to help Lark, that was his original reason, but he also wanted to complete a quest. If he captured the evil spirits here, he could obtain the secret item he desired most. However, there was a problem. The special evil spirit here belonged to Sabancia. This was a staged mission designed to be impossible to complete. How could he capture a special evil spirit instead of a common one, especially when he couldn't even see it? The Duke attacked him directly, an assault from a Duke general who had commanded the South 800 years ago. Most players would die instantly on starting this mission, but Corin could not be affected by the spirit due to his restriction. The problem was Corin could also not see him. So he spoke to the Duke, apologized, and said he couldn't see him, asking whether he could enter this man's body. In this world exists something called factors, elements that transform normal humans into demi-humans, such as vampires or werewolves. One day, Duke Kansia awakened as a vampire and killed his own servant. Although he struggled to control his vampiric impulses, he ultimately failed. In the end, fearing he might kill his wife and daughter, he evacuated his family and sealed the castle to prevent a massacre. He used magic to seal himself inside a book. That book is the grimoire hidden within this library. The Duke obeyed and truly entered his body. However, Corin asked if he intended to attack him and questioned whether he had gone mad. The second reason Corin had chosen Lark was that he was a human with very poor physical abilities. Corin simply punched Lark in the head, and after literally stepping on him, he felt a bit pity. Still, this was the best strategy to complete the Duke's mission. He could have killed Lark right there to obtain the vampire's items. Sihu had used such methods, but Corin wasn't like that. Corin then asked the Duke whether he was curious about his wife, his daughter, and what kind of lives they lived after he was sealed. He told the Duke many stories, how his wife died after leaving the castle, and how his daughter became an incredible adventurer who traveled the world. The Duke didn't like the methods Sihu had used, but since Corin also had a family he loved in this world, he wanted to give the poor soul a proper ending. The Duke thanked him deeply and apologized for attacking him. Corin said it was fine. After all, the Duke hadn't even hit him. However, he had one more request. The Duke agreed. Before ascending, they had a long conversation, and Corin succeeded. From the soul dust and the grimoire, he obtained the skill Persistent Warrior's Regeneration. As long as he maintained his willpower and fighting spirit, his body would continue to regenerate. Corin thought the bastard Sihu possessed this ability, but he didn't know how strong the regeneration was, since Sihu had never truly been injured. When Lark woke up, Corin told him not to strain himself too much. An evil spirit had possessed him. Lark asked if his jaw was supposed to hurt after being possessed. Corin replied that he had no idea, but it probably did, then told him to shut up and handed him a grimoire. The final reason Corin had chosen Lark was precisely to help him. He wanted to see those who worked hard be rewarded. His duty was fulfilled, and he gained 80 points. Based on the game system, one gains 5 status points per level, so this is equivalent to gaining 16 levels at once. He did not receive any level up notification, meaning this reward was granted separately from experience points. The system announced that Corin Lot had not turned a blind eye to Lark's misfortune, granting him 40 points evenly distributed, and another 40 for not ignoring the Duke's misfortune. Later, in the training hall, Mariette was handing out sweet potatoes. She asked Corin if he would continue the same training as before. She encouraged him and said she would stay to cheer him on, but others told her not to give him false hope. Of course, capturing a spiritual body should have been impossible. Still, Mariette bet that he would succeed, wagering 2 gold coins. Corin remarked that they were now using him for gambling. He decided to focus. All the status points he gained after helping Sabancia ascend would be extremely useful. He first tested the basics. His thrusts were much faster and more powerful. This time, with a single strike, he defeated the wind spirit, and even added the serpent's omen. Corin realized that he had become a little too strong. Mariette asked whether it had taken 3 strikes yesterday, while today it only took 1. He wondered if she had watched everything the day before. More importantly, she was a mage capable of tracking the calamity intent of the serpent with her eyes. Mariette handed him his share of the gold. Thanks to him, she had made a nice profit from the bets. Corin liked that as well. After all, what kind of person does not like money? He thought Mariette was truly intelligent. Later, Corin reflected on how, in his past life, he had fought tooth and nail to refine his martial arts. Even now, he could barely complete the 5th of the 6 steps toward enlightenment. There was still a long road ahead, but his progress with the spear was much faster than he had expected. The problem lay with the magical rune, Ragalars. He could not use it due to his low mana. He had not been able to solve this issue in his past life either, as magical runes consumed an incredible amount of mana. If he could solve this, he would become far stronger than he ever was before. He decided to keep thinking about it. However, in the middle of the night, someone called out to him in the academy's silent, dark corridors. No matter how primitive his magic might be, rune-based magical domains still existed. Within this academy, there was already someone he could not defeat, the only female character that even Sihu had been unable to kill, Celestial Raka Haran. Corin wondered why she was here and why she was speaking to him. He considered ignoring her and leaving, since she was a ticking time bomb, but Haran said that he was strangely composed and asked whether he truly believed he was the rightful owner of that body. Corin wondered if she knew he was possessed. He knew that a being who carried both a human soul and a monster soul like Haran was exactly that kind of contradictory existence. It was said that those who stood between life and death could see the color of souls. For her, it must have been strange not to see that color in him. She then asked how it felt to crush and consume the original soul of that body. Corin replied that he did not know. He had worried a great deal about such questions in his past life. He wondered whether he and Corin Lot were truly different people. The memories of Corin that had assimilated into him were also his own. Who was the one who went through elementary school at an all-boys middle school, attended college, and had a military career? In the end, it all felt meaningless. However, this might be different for Haran, since the original soul still remained in that body. Haran said that the true owner of that body was not him, that he was merely a thief who had no right to it. Corin responded by mentioning that near his homeland there was someone who turned into a green giant whenever he got angry. His name was Bruce Banner. Did she know him? The funniest part was that the two personalities opposed and hated each other. That was what made it interesting, since each was good at different things. What Corin meant was that if the original soul, whether newly formed or not, had different characteristics, both could coexist and live together. Like it or not, they were born into the same body. And there was no sin in being born, was there? Haran replied that for some, being born was indeed a sin. 3 years ago, Corin might have understood the agony of such a child, but now he simply ignored it. The next day, he headed to the southern side of the academy. He left his dormitory before the birds even began singing, signaling the start of the weekend, because of the mission board. The small and large missions here helped one level up in preparation for the next main mission, which made them a necessary path for progression. His main purpose was not earning points. In truth, he only wanted to test something. At that moment, he noticed Elysia standing right beside him. He realized that he did not have much information about her. In his past life, the bastard Sihu had ruined her. Her memories were different from what he had seen in the game. Corin asked whether she had been doing missions since the first week. She replied that she was rank D and did not need to. However, Elysia explained that she actually needed the money. The academy did not provide her with support funds because her family income ranked in the top 10%. Corin thought this was somewhat similar to scholarship systems in Korea. Students from wealthy families received no financial support for activities. Elysia explained that her parents were extremely permissive and, to be honest, did not give her any money at all. He noticed that she was in a rather difficult situation and suggested, "How about a patrol mission? The cost-benefit ratio is great." Elysia said that up to 3 were allowed and asked whether he wanted to join. Corin replied that he had something else to do, another mission in fact. His weekend would be spent separating the wheat from the chaff. He accepted a mission to find a 2-year-old butterfly cat. The experience and payment were minimal, but that didn't matter to him. His true goal was a commandment. If he saved and returned the butterfly cat that had nearly died at the hands of aquatic monsters, he would prevent the misfortune of its owner. As a result, he returned the kitten and gained 5 evenly distributed points. That was how commandments truly worked in missions. He continued completing missions to earn more points again and again, but he almost forgot about a mission even more important than points. Meanwhile, in a restaurant, a man was extremely angry. He had made a sauce using more than 10 ingredients, including garlic, carrots, and peppers, yet there was not a single sauce capable of satisfying his desire to cook delicious fried chicken. Corin appeared and suggested adding starch syrup, saying that it would solve the problem. Then he said, "See you later." The restaurant owner wondered if he was crazy. Still, he added it anyway, and soon realized that the sauce had become incredibly delicious. As Corin left the restaurant, he thought that this was exactly the mission he needed to solve. For the Koreans of this world, it would be very difficult to survive without such delicious fried chicken. He gained another 5 evenly distributed points. He had not known that commandments applied to things like this either. It was wonderful. He laughed with great excitement, letting out a rather evil chuckle. Meanwhile, Corin was observing this strange man. A professor approached her and said she would need permission to leave the academy. Corin simply turned away, remembering what Corin had said. There was no sin in being born. Yet she also remembered what others had said, that she should never have been born. Later, at the hunting grounds, the professor announced that first-year students would be evaluated on their survival tactics. If they reached the cabin to the north, at the edge of the forest, they would pass. Everyone put on their rank armbands. Depending on how long they took to arrive while wearing them, they would receive fewer points. The points earned could be exchanged for rewards. Corin noticed that Ewan was not present. Then again, she never participated in this kind of practical activity anyway. When Elysia approached him, he asked whether she had managed to complete any missions. She replied that she had. Thanks to him, she was finally able to earn enough to cover her expenses. Corin asked whether she wanted some candy. He had brought it with him, but it was extremely sweet. She asked if it was a honey bomb. She loved it. However, at that moment, Josephine used her magic whip to begin the field test. Corin thought that he had seen all kinds of mages, but the only person capable of creating special magic on this scale was Josephine, the great witch Josephine. Corin was thrown into the middle of the forest and soon noticed 2 students fighting each other. The hunting field was an important event, one that even professionals needed several attempts to clear. It was a battle royale system in which participants started at random locations and had to earn points by stealing others' armbands. Corin wished those who were fighting good luck, but he would not stay there. The most dangerous person at the moment was Aishaksa, a rank A student wearing a blue armband. Since Rara was not present, as long as he dealt with Elysia, things would be fine. She did not know it, but Corin had placed a tracking rune on the candy she ate. This rune would allow him to find her again. He followed the signal relentlessly, like a psychopath. Josephine informed the principal that she would also enter the forest. Although teachers had already been deployed throughout the area, it was better to be cautious. She then asked, "Where is that child?" The principal replied that he had not sent her. She had gone on her own. Ron was actually pursuing Corin, who did not realize he was being followed. The principal said that she had undergone a change in her heart. Meanwhile, Alicia was already facing several problems. She complained that it was unfair for many people to attack a single person. However, she had knocked them all down, and they replied that what was truly unfair were her abilities. Another student rushed at her with his bare fists, but he was struck by a stone thrown by an enraged Corin. She thought he had saved her, but then he charged at her as well. Alicia said that she had trusted him and believed he was a good person. Alicia was a second-rank knight with a pure combat style. She still could not properly use her Vigilant Eyes ability. Corin told her that she was a good person too, and that she should hand over her armband. She could not compare to her prodigy sister, but Alicia was still within the top 1%. She had easily dealt with 7 students who had formed an alliance of rank 3 and rank 4 members. Naturally, she had not been worried about Corin because he was rank 5. At least 30 seconds ago. When she blocked his spear, she realized he was very strong. Corin understood her strategy. A short-range sword required closing the distance by invading the opponent's space, but he would never allow that. He noticed openings and took advantage of one of them, but Corin remarked that it was a lack of practice caused by over-reliance on talent. He used the block counterattack, capturing her sword and following up with his techniques. He unleashed the Essence Spear's maximum resolve, the 6 steps of victory. She was struck directly in the abdomen and sent flying, losing her sword. She realized it was not that he was overwhelmingly strong or fast, he was simply far more experienced. She wondered whether he was truly only rank C. She was completely defeated. Corin took her armband and said he would make good use of it. At that moment, an extremely powerful person approached, knocking others aside and clashing a massive sword against Corin's spear. Corin recognized it as a magic sword made of heavy iron. He knew who used such a weapon. The one who appeared was Drone Warzaski. He said that Corin was impressive for a rank C, but demanded that he hand over the armband. Corin thought that he truly did not want to fight him. Even after defeating countless people, Drone did not have a single scratch. Corin said that there was no other choice. He would run. However, Drone asked whether the armband Corin had was blue, then began throwing multiple swords at him. Alicia was also running, following Corin. He knew there was no point in fighting here. He only needed to bring the armband to the cabin. However, the cabin was being guarded by one of Cranel Luden's golems, which declared that anyone wishing to enter would have to get past it. Alicia commented that this was rather unfair. Corin replied that it was merely difficult to deal with. In front of him stood Cranel. Behind him was Drone. While trying to avoid a fight, it became clear that he would have to face 2 named individuals at the same time. He raised his spear with unyielding resolve. If he could not avoid a fight, he would give it everything he had. Later, someone knocked on the cabin door. The first-place finisher, Corin Lot, stood there carrying 3 blue armbands. The official remarked that it was impressive. Corin replied that he had simply been lucky. After seeing him defeat Cranel, Alicia thought he was incredible. He had pierced the core of the magic sword before it could reach its maximum potential. To prevent Drone from using telekinesis, he embedded one of Drone's swords into the ground, then guided the remaining swords toward the golem, using the golem itself against Drone. Drone was more or less forced to neutralize the golem. Alicia was impressed by Corin's reaction speed, judgment, and even his psychological composure. He looked like a soldier who had fought in countless wars. He remembered his words and realized that she truly had not practiced enough because of her overconfidence. Drone, too, was impressed by that boy. As for poor Cranel, he was left lying on the ground. When Cranel was defeated, Corin commented that golems were large targets for small but powerful opponents. If it had been him, he would have found a companion to guard his rear. Cranel replied that he had no friends. Corin simply wished him good luck. Poor Cranel was left there alone. That day, 3 named first-year students would remember Corin Lot in their own ways. At that point, the strongest remaining participant was Drida, who was receiving protection from the Forest of Yell. But she was not alone. The strongest presence in the forest was the great mage of Merkaba Academy, Mariette Donolith. With her water magic, she completely devastated the poor druid's plants. The upperclassmen were acting as monsters, helping with the students' practical training. Unfortunately, Yuel was particularly extremely unlucky. That is how the hunting training ended. Or so everyone thought, because Rorin was also there. Mariette noticed that Ron has already knocked down several people and concluded that she must be searching for someone, gathering only those similar to her. Rorin even tried to pass through, but Mariette created a massive wall of ice. She said that she could ignore her personally, but according to the rules, Rorin was considered a monster, so she could not do the same for her. Later, Corin selected his rewards with a total of 117 points. He chose a boar molar knife, a protective leather coat, and a shark bear fang blade. The fang blade was the rarest of them all, and it was the reason he had come here in the first place. Of course, he also took a mandrake seed. The man at the cabin remarked that Corin truly had a good eye, and was surprised that someone would choose a mandrake seed. Then he asked what he would do with the remaining 17 points. Corin requested plant nutritional supplies and ear protection. After leaving the cabin, Corin said it was a great shopping session. Even after playing so many times, the game had never felt this good. It was also the first time he had seen Jagger and Lark finish together. Jagger earned 19 points, and Lark earned 15. Corin asked whether they had worked together. Jagger said it was easy, and suggested training later in the endurance hall, inviting Corin to join if he wanted. Corin then went to help Crannel find a golem core, which Crannel needed to build his next golem. In his previous life, Corin had worked a lot with Crannel. There were very few tanks capable of drawing monster aggro while dealing damage as effectively as golems, especially against large-scale monsters. So he helped recover the core. Alicia ended up somewhat injured. Drone had his combat power reduced to 0 after losing the materials used to create his swords. She was in terrible condition, nearly dead. Corin was startled, but he rescued her anyway. Suddenly, a powerful tremor shook the forest. Someone warned Corin that it was probably Mariette and told him to run. Corin knew that Mariette possessed a natural ability to analyze magic, combined with an absurd amount of mana. She was a mage who seemed to never have experienced despair, frustration, or failure. A perfect talent. As they said, Mariette Donaleff was a genius. To her, this hunting ground was just a playground. She only needed to manage the difficulty moderately and help the freshmen grow like monsters. For her, it was supposed to be nothing more than fun. However, she was being completely overwhelmed by Rorin. She fired numerous ice fragments, but Ron shattered them with her own body as if they were nothing. Although Mariette had promised the professors not to use magic above the intermediate level, she was already casting advanced spells. Even if she wanted to deny it, she was using her full power. Still, Ron shattered her ice and landed a kick directly into her stomach. Mariette warned her not to come any closer. What stood before her was no longer a game, but a walking natural disaster. She ordered her to stay back, but at that moment, Josephine herself appeared, commanding Rorin to stop and asking whether Mariette was all right. Mariette replied that she was, as much as possible, but in the next second, she collapsed unconscious. During this hunting field training, several unexpected outcomes occurred. First, the top-ranked student was Corin, a rank 5 freshman. Second, the ace of the first year, Rorin, clashed with the ace of the second year, Mariette, and Mariette ended up in the infirmary. Corin found it frightening. He wondered if she had already awakened as a boss after that tremor. She seemed fine for now, so everything should proceed according to the original storyline. At least he hoped so. There were about 3 weeks left until her awakening. He decided to think about it later. Corin returned to the forest surrounding the hunting grounds because he wanted to find a certain being that lived there. First, he applied a large amount of eye drops to his eyes. "Oops, I slipped," Corin said with an overly forced performance. "Oh no, the precious seed my mother left me fell into the lake." Soon, a presence appeared and asked why he was crying. In the heroic legend of Arhan, there exists a one-time-only staged event, the Taoist Hermit. It is based on a legend in which an hermit asks a woodcutter who accidentally drops an iron axe into the lake whether the axe that surfaced was made of gold or silver. The being standing before him now was that very Taoist hermit from the legend. Just like in the original story, 2 items appear, 1 gold and 1 silver. They are limited to unique class weapons or below. There is no different outcome even if other items are thrown into the lake. However, an old player once started a random item challenge. Among those attempts, even heroes ended up dropping rare items, a cruel joke the bastard developers added while laughing at the players. The Taoist asked whether the golden seed belonged to him. Corin answered no. The silver one, he answered again. Corin wondered what kind of maniac would throw a mandrake seed, which he had struggled to buy for 100 points, into a lake. The Taoist then said that the remaining seed must be his. Corin replied that yes, it definitely was. He thought that perhaps he was the lunatic after all. The Taoist said that even after seeing the gold and silver seeds, Corin remained honest. Appreciating his honesty, the hermit gave him all 3 seeds. Corin thanked him sincerely as the hermit departed. He laughed like a psychopath because he already knew this would happen. Items could be duplicated here. A standard mandrake seed increases mana. However, the gold and silver seeds had special effects. If the gold seed was planted, it would grow into a mandrake shining with golden light. The silver one was similar, but it was a secret item that could only be obtained through this method. In his previous life, Sihu had eaten both the gold seed and silver seed. Now, both of them belonged to Corin. Later, Corin pondered Mariette. What had caused her to awaken as the first boss, a special vampire? That mission would occur in 3 weeks, an encounter with the vampire murderer of Fog City, John Doe. Corin did not yet know exactly how the demonic tribe agent inside Mariette would awaken, but there was still time to find out.